In January of 2024, I started my adventures into video essays with a video on the troubled new regional fleet, bringing to light a collection of documents that had gone seemingly unreported on. A year later, the first trains have arrived, and I think it's an appropriate time to revisit the subject. If you haven't already, please watch the old video after this one, as it contains a lot of important context as to the nature of the delays and cost blowouts, and many construction updates up to that point. The most obvious update is the arrival of sets R1 and R2 in Australia in February. These trains were delivered to Port Kembla and transported by road to Dubbo, where the fleet will receive heavy maintenance. Set R1 has undergone a vigorous testing regime in both Spain and Dubbo, allegedly, and I have no sources for this, so take it with a pinch of salt, to the point of near destruction. Based on how some people have described it, I would expect this unit to require extensive heavy maintenance before it can begin acceptance testing on New South Wales main lines, if indeed it does enter service at all. Set R2 has had a more interesting journey, being the first R set to be moved by rail on its transfer to Auburn Heavy Maintenance Centre in Sydney, where it will be subjected to tests under wires. The site at Dubbo does have a small 1500 volt test area, however it is confined to one shed road and is thus not long enough to support dynamic testing. Many temporary safe notices were applied, you can find these on RailSafe, and then withdrawn for dynamic testing of R2. To date, none have gone ahead. A set of new notices have gone up onto ARTC for testing in February, so we'll see if that happens. 2 further overseas trip reports have been made public since the last video, and these detail further insights into the programme. A trip in April and May involved verification of the event recorder, HVAC, brake control, lights, safety systems, wiper and washer, and fatigue monitoring system. At this time, set R3 was nearly complete, with photos taken of its exterior and a vestibule. Short sets 1 and 2, perhaps their set numbers will be R11 and 12, had their car bodies under various stages of construction and fit-out. These short sets will enter service after the long ones, after both of which the Intercity Endeavour replacement sets will enter service. In July, another trip was made, this time focusing on set R4's propulsion, event recorder, safety systems, activation and power management, boarding control, and various other functions. It appears from this that the unit was ready to be shipped to Australia to undergo final fit-out, with images showing a finished exterior alongside many completed aspects of internal fit-out, including the checked luggage area, buffet, and the seat trial. Apparently, a further 2 or 3 sets were delivered in late October, presumably carrying R3, 4, and possibly 5. In total, 29 trains have been ordered. This comprises of 10 6-car long regional XPT replacements, 9 3-car short regional Explorer replacements, and 10 3-car Intercity Endeavour replacements. All XPTs and Explorers will be withdrawn, however some Endeavours will be retained at Broadmeadow Depot for use on Hunter services out of Newcastle Interchange. The trains will all be semi-permanently coupled, thus the current practice of extending or shortening trains, particularly Explorers, will cease. The long regional sets are formed of an RDB second-class driving car with the checked luggage area, RID second-class car with pantograph, RIC second-class car, RIB first-class car with buffet, RIA first-class car with pantograph, and RDA first-class driving car. The provider of the traction motors, Traction System Austria, suggest every wheel set will have its own motor, thus every car will be a motor car. When operating off wires, the motors will be fed by diesel engines, I presume also in every car. I can only assume the formation of the short regional trains will be RDB as above, RI second class with buffet and pantograph, and RDA as above. I, among many, have criticised these trains for their lack of sleeper accommodation. Many have suggested a possible solution in buying additional sleeper cars to extend the long regionals to 7 cars long. This would provide an adequate stopgap, but is not ideal in the long term. In my opinion, the best solution is one that I've heard the government is considering: running XPTs on sleeper services for a few years yet with a slightly higher concentration of sleeper cars, and look for a dedicated sleeper replacement. This would allow a train to be ordered tailored specifically for overnight services, potentially with a range of sleeping accommodations, including pods, as seen on new night jets operated by OBB. Triple bunk sleeper cabins, as seen on most European overnight trains, seats with either generous or full recline, like on the diesel tilt train in Queensland, or something else entirely. These trains could turn the Melbourne and Brisbane services into world-class overnight services, whilst increasing regional capacity. From an operational standpoint, the R-sets would still likely need to travel overnight to place them for the morning return services. These runs could be aimed at serving the intermediate towns in shorter journeys. Demand exists currently for increased train capacity between capitals, even in second class, given the XPTs are often booked out well in advance. So it'd be likely both services would end up full anyway. One other thing I'd personally like to see is the conveyance of Opal passengers. It appears that the trains are fitted with a seat reservation system akin to those found in Europe, which, if true, would display the next booking of the seat concerned. Passengers should be able to travel within the Opal area either as standees on full trains or in unreserved seats as described by the system, adding capacity to areas including the Hunter Line west of Maitland, the Southern Highlands Line, and the Bathurst Bullet. From interior vision provided by Transport, the seats look quite comfortable. I'm not a fan of the overhead bins as opposed to normal racks, but luggage stacks still exist for larger bags. Onboard free drinking water is still provided, and it's good that all regional trains include a buffet. Of course, being a modern train, real-time information and device charging is provided. Wi-Fi is being investigated. If nothing else, these trains should be nice to travel on to places like Canberra and Dubbo. I'm still not convinced about further flung destinations like Broken Hill, although those services are currently run by multiple units, so the ride quality certainly won't get worse on former Explorer runs at least. I also have reservations, as mentioned above, about the train lengths. The long regionals present an additional car over the mostly 5-car XPTs they replace, but I don't know how many seats there will be. It's possible a lower density seating arrangement exists. In peak times, XPTs get stretched to 6 cars, and the captive Dubbo set is always 4 cars, so if the long trains are used here, an additional 2 cars are provided. The Explorer services are slightly different. Currently, the Broken Hill, Griffith and Moree services are 2 cars long. These services will all be extended to 3 cars. The Canberra trains are often 3 cars today, so will not see a difference, and the Armidale trains are 4 cars, thus they will lose capacity. It's possible, however, that the allocation of sets may change. Dubbo, for example, may end up with twice daily short sets. The midday Canberra train might become a long set. Who knows what will happen? A lot of flexibility is gained by operating variants of one train. Southern Highlands, Bathurst Bullet and Bomaderry shuttle trains will all be extended to 3 cars. I've heard some people argue that the bi-mode traction package is greenwashing and won't achieve anything. I'd argue quite strongly against that. Services like the Bathurst Bullet are already mostly under wires, and it's wasteful to run diesels under wires for so long. It could also allow other service changes, like the extension of more Southern Highlands services to Central, and possibly the extension of the Bomaderry shuttle to Wollongong. Rotation of the Bomaderry set, a procedure carried out entirely under wires, would also benefit. The benefits are not limited to the environment too, with cheaper operating expenses and a more comfortable ride when travelling in electric mode. In a very, very unlikely world, it would allow more electrification, making more use of this capability, such as Macarthur to Moss Vale, Islington Junction to Talara, Kiama to Bomaderry or Lithgow to Bathurst. The latter two would probably allow the displacement of RSETs to bolster service elsewhere. Obviously, this requires the cooperation of the ARTC, who notoriously won't touch electrification with a barge pole. That more or less concludes this year's update. Fingers crossed we see more action in the coming months. I'll try and film dynamic testing as much as I can. Thanks for watching, and thanks to my channel members for their support.